Welcome to Marketing Rebels Breaking Business Barriers. You've joined us today for a special series called Marketing Momentum for Mental Health. And we have Simone here today. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself, why this topic matters to her, and why it should matter to you. Simone, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Shauna. I appreciate it.
Go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself. We all want to, we're dying to hear. We're dying to hear, why is Simone here and what does she have to do with mental health?
So thank you so much for having me here. I'm thrilled to be here to share some insights and strategies aimed at helping entrepreneurs really navigate the complexities of mental health while pursuing their ambitious goals, because we spend time stretching every day, and it can arise some challenges, mental health, emotional challenges, and some physical challenges. Today, we'll be focusing a little bit more on the mental challenges that come up with entrepreneurs. So, as an entrepreneur myself, I'm a stress management and mindset breakthrough coach, and my mission is really to empower fellow entrepreneurs to skyrocket their results and really make breakthroughs not only in their business but in their lives, because we are the common denominator in everything that we do. And to give you a little bit of background where I'm coming from, my background spans 30 years in healthcare and health sciences. And I've witnessed firsthand the rampant mental health challenges faced not only by the patients that I worked with, but by healthcare staff. The exposure to the suffering that people, struggled with really spurred me to shift my focus from diagnosing the suffering and what was going on health-wise for people to preventing it. So I transitioned during that time to my training into a wellness practitioner and coach, and I offered body work and coaching services to clients to really proactively address and prevent physical, mental, and emotional issues from escalating and causing health issues in their lives. I was really driven by a hunger to really learn the cutting edge approaches that could help my clients experience greater calmness, control, and balance in their lives, while aligning with their highest values. So there wasn't so much inner conflict, because that in itself causes problems.
That makes perfect sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. And what I hear that, like, I feel like the most important part of this is the switch from being reactive to proactive.
Absolutely. I worked as a diagnostic medical radiation technologist, so I was involved in the diagnostics with patients, and I saw some things that nobody should have to go through. And I'm like, what is the root cause of this? Because to me, like, it's great to band-aid stuff, but if you don't get to the root cause, it's going to show up again. And if you don't give people tools for managing the root cause, you're going to continue to have problems. And that was my big shift. I was like, things can change. Things can change.
I am frequently heard to say, stop putting lipstick on a pig, these Band-Aid solutions aren't going to help. So this is really refreshing to hear another person say, hey, look, we actually need to do the hard work to dig down to see what's the real reason for all this? Where is this starting, and how can we actually fix the dam instead of using buckets to scoop out all the stuff that comes? So where do we start in that journey?
So I think that's really interesting, because it's difficult when you don't have the tools. Anything's difficult when you don't have the tools. You need the tools to manifest faster change, and I am all about faster change to decrease suffering. So the work that I did, so around that work, that how do you make things easier? How do you make them less stressful? How do you make things faster so that you're not spending so much time in that problem state? After doing body work with clients, I really started to understand that mind-body connection, and launched into a career in coaching, and learned about the subconscious mind and the unconscious mind and how that drives behavior and the results that we get. And that, of course, wasn't enough for me, because I really needed to understand how it worked. So
philo math, you and I, we're loving the learning. We just got to keep going.
Right. And so one thing led to another, and the pursuit led me to become a certified neuro change method practitioner and a neuro-linguistic coach and master practitioner. And when I learned about what that entailed and how much more ease we could get change with, I'm like, why doesn't everybody know about this? And so I've continued in my learning and growth and development. I think that's part of naturally who I am, and one of my highest values is learning and growth. And so I obtained my certification as a life coach and business coach, and most recently as a trauma informed coach. So I literally just wrote my exams last night. And so I'm really thrilled to have that. It was quite an involved program. And it really is, to be certified in that is something I would recommend for all coaches, because when you're dealing with clients, their stuff shows up. And if you're not prepared to deal with it, or you're not comfortable dealing with it, then the clients don't get the growth. So all in all, I'm all about filling the gap and accelerating goals. And the training that I've taken has equipped me with a fairly comprehensive toolkit to support entrepreneurs in overcoming challenges and maximizing their potential and thriving in both their professional and their personal endeavors. And for me, this is where my flow state is. I love exploring with people, like, what is a challenge that's showing up and how do we unpack that and make it easy for you to move to the next stage. And I love it when people are able to change without getting too distressed, at a higher speed. And so I teach people how to regulate themselves so that they can stay calm, cool, and collected as they make the changes.
Because change can feel really challenging. That's why you hear things like, what is that famous Sheldon Cooper quote when he says, it's a comfort zone. You stay in it for a reason.
Absolutely.
Because it can be very scary. So how do you actually help people to get from a place of relative unease, but they're used to it, so it's kind of comfortable, to a place where you're able to actually step outside of that space and not feel fully shut down, not feel so fearful of what might come next, even if it's a good thing?
Absolutely. Well, there's lots of good things, but we still need to stretch to reach those as we continue to develop. And I think you and I talked about imposter syndrome at one point, and how entrepreneurs are stretching every day. Many people don't stretch much in their job. They just do they know exactly what their job's supposed to do. They do it day after day. That's not the way entrepreneurs work. They're stretching every single day. They're always moving into the unknown. They're always moving into change, and things change fast in the entrepreneurial world. And, keeping up is a challenge. And it's kind of that the dark side of entrepreneurship that nobody thinks about, right? People think, they see the front part, but they don't see the messy scene behind, as people try to keep up with processes, technology, right? It's like there's a whole machine working back there that most
I'm
people don't
giggling
think
because you're reminding me of a short story where it's, I don't know if it's a joke, but it's where, a person an entrepreneur specifically, comes riding into the room on a tiger, and everybody's thinking, wow, look, they're riding a tiger. And the entrepreneur's thinking, how the hell did I get on this tiger? And they're so confused. I pictured that, because all people see is that cool outward image, but what's going on behind the scenes can lead to a whole heck of a lot of trouble if you don't manage it properly.
Absolutely. I have a great story. Thank you. Yeah. So one of the first things I learned when I started working in the coaching industry is becoming aware of our unconscious patterns. So this is one of the, we talk about the silver lining strategies in recognizing how to make the change. And so one of the pieces is awareness of our unconscious patterns and the behaviors that sabotage our efforts. And I can tell you that there's a lot of entrepreneurs that put a lot of effort into what they do. But if you just understand the unconscious patterns and behaviors, then we have something tangible to work with. And so as we become aware of the patterns of behavior, then we can also become aware of the emotions that cause that pattern. So I have something called an unconscious problem strategy template, where we can identify these patterns effectively. So really, we want to look at what is the problem, what are the emotions just before that pattern shows up, and then what is the internal dialogue that happens just before the emotion shows up, and then what is the trigger, the event, the experience that causes that internal dialogue, that causes the emotions, that causes the problem. And then, so that's, for most people, that's unconscious. They just know that I hear it all the time. I'm stuck. I don't know how to do this. I'm stuck on the how. I feel overwhelmed. I'm procrastinating. I can apply anything to this unconscious problem strategy template. And what I really, really get excited about, especially with the groups that I work with small groups of entrepreneurs, and I work with entrepreneurs and clients one-on-one. And when they learn when they learn that template for their own unconscious problem strategy, all of a sudden they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah. I said, we can change that. Would you be interested in that? So there are a number of steps after that, but basically there's a four steps unconscious problem strategy template that we use. And then we explore the beliefs behind that and what that looks like.
Right.
And so once we understand that and we know how to apply that, because as an entrepreneur, I know I need to be fairly pragmatic. I need to be able to apply what I know to something. I have to recognize it in myself. So I need the awareness. And then I need a tool to unpack it so that I can repack it the way I want to, moving in the direction that I want to, hopefully with less interference.
Yeah.
So when we shine the light on our subconscious tendencies, we can break free from that self-sabotaging patterns and pave the way for sustainable success. And that to me is one of the key pieces that I do with every single client I work with. And we do it fast. We can do it in about 5 minutes. And they're like, okay, got it. I said, now we have something to work with.
Right.
And so
So I
that's
guess
the number one.
that, and that's sounds like, honestly, just from an outsider point of view, because I'm not well versed in this, but the concept actually feels daunting in and of itself. And except I know the situations in which you describe, very, like, generally speaking, I know where I fit into that. So I know that that sort of process would be necessary, especially with guidance. But something you came back to full circle was the tools. We keep talking about these tools because, like I was saying at the beginning, if you're using a bucket to try to drain this massive amount of water, you're not going to achieve that much success. A bucket can only hold so much. So how do we go about finding the right tools?
Well, I think that's where you need to find somebody who is well versed at those tools, that is happy to share those tools with you. And so my goal isn't just to help entrepreneurs really skyrocket in their business and in life. One of my goals is to teach people how to do it for themselves. And that's like teaching somebody to fish rather than giving them the fish, right? It's like, how can I share that with you so that you can use that for yourself and move other things forward with that tool? And once people learn the tools, they start getting faster and faster results. And they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah. And they're like, this is fun. I'm like, yes, it's fun. That's how life should be fun.
Absolutely. Both life and business and career and all of the different aspects that come with living. I agree wholeheartedly. I'm all about play. So you told us step one, but there are quite a few steps involved. What's the next phase? What are we moving into?
Well, so there's a number of different techniques and tools that I use to support my clients. And I've been doing this for some time now and a number of years. And so I have sort of a system where I know what I can use to create fast change for people. And specifically, entrepreneurs who really care about um, people, the planet, they're conscious leaders, they're conscious entrepreneurs. Those are the people I'm really, really focused on because they can make massive change in this world. And when we have a group of people moving forward like that, we can create quite a massive ripple effect. So I'm really interested in people who want to make a difference. They're impact entrepreneurs. They may be working in the field of health or relationships or finances or careers, and helping their clients do various things. But the better those entrepreneurs can do, the more people they can reach.
Right. And I can
And so,
imagine that those people are just knowing myself and identifying with being a conscious leader, a conscious entrepreneur. Um, there's a lot of empathy that is usually housed in these people. And so being highly empathic,
mhm,
that can be an element of how you're being stretched. And so your mental
absolutely.
health could suffer maybe exponentially by contrast to someone who's maybe a little bit less conscious. Um, so that adds an element of complexity, for lack of a better word, to the type of service that you're providing to them in navigating their potentially chronic mental health issues or the emerging mental health concerns that come with the ups and downs of life.
Absolutely. And you can't really separate physical, mental, emotional. They're all us. And people um, are sometimes surprised to learn that our mental creates our physical, creates our emotional, creates our physical, creates our mental. It's like a triad, right? And
Right.
there's it can start at any piece and affect us. But what does life look like if you can manage those in a way that you don't get overwhelmed? The I think of high empathy entrepreneurs. And the challenge is when their clients are stressed, they're going to feel that, and they
Mhm.
need to learn a way to manage that when they're in the space of somebody else who is experiencing stressors of some sort, whether it be physical, mental, or emotional. I mean, working at the hospital for 30 years in the healthcare setting, I dealt with trauma every day and saw some pretty horrific things happen. And I had to learn to self-regulate under those circumstances. And so the biggest challenge I see with anybody that I'm working with is they're teaching them to self-regulate. So how do you stay in what I call the green zone? How do you not escalate into reactivity or shut down into, freeze or faint, or the responses that we get, the stress responses that we get when we're uh, you know, emotionally activated or too much on our plate? Like, how do we manage those things? And, I have people that come to me and they feel completely bogged down. They don't know where to start. And because they're sort of in the weeds,
Mhm.
it's difficult for them to see it from a sort of a zoomed out perspective. And so I basically teach them how to use different tools to not be so associated with what's going on so they can make better decisions, and they can use their values, they can use um, the approach that is important to them and is aligned with them, so
Mhm.
that they can move forward without the distractions and the overwhelm that goes with that. And this is a pretty fast paced world. So entrepreneurs have a lot to deal with, for sure. Um, but there is an actual recipe for sustainable success, and that's what I wanted to share with you next, if that's
Well,
okay.
that's exciting. I like cooking, so let's dive into a recipe.
Right. And let's do the recipe thing. So, what I've learned is when you have a structured approach to sustainable success, you can repeat it. Once you learn something, you can repeat it, and it almost goes on automation after enough repetitions, right? So after you've cooked a meal that you've used a recipe for, how do you have to go right to back to that recipe, or do you start adding things and sort of massaging it a little bit so it becomes a little bit more unique for you? Um,
100%. That's my banana bread
for sure.
story all over again.
Yeah. And there are some people who are still going to use that their recipe no matter what. And so
Yeah.
there needs to be flexibility and adaptability within that. Um, so the five-step recipe that I use encompasses elements such as vision and resources, skill sets, internal motivations, the why, the values, right? And an action plan. And so when you have those five pieces all working together, all
Mhm.
of a sudden you're going to see um, success in whatever your goals are. Um, but it's a matter of breaking it down. And most people create goals that are too big. And you know how they say big C goals, stretch goals? I think they're great, but in the right place.
Right.
So there's a place for that. And then there is that breaking it down. So there is an action plan and a path to be able to succeed in accessing that. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. This is actually something that I love to dive into when it comes to making not just smart goals, but almost reverse engineering how you get there. I do this all the time
Yeah.
in my day to day just to make sure
Yeah.
that I can actually accomplish the things that I want to do. But what we're talking about is that and becoming more proactive to potentially detrimental situations. Like, how do we, you're talking about self regulation. So, this is all like a whole different ball game.
Welcome to my healthcare background,
Ooh. So, what's
right?
next?
Yeah. So having systems, we know how important systems are as an entrepreneur. So having this recipe, this five-step recipe, is a system to cultivate a mindset and a lifestyle conducive to long-term success without sacrificing our mental well-being. Because if we're having to sort those individual pieces out and we don't have a system, we are going to be using Smarties. And I talk about Smarties as energy units. And
Right.
so, how you start off every day with so many Smarties. Say you start off with 100 Smarties in the morning. You get up, you do your morning duties, you get yourself dressed, you have your family to deal with, maybe you get your coffee going, and then, or your tea, or your healthy lemon water, whatever it happens to
Lemon
be.
water. Yeah.
So we've already used about 15, 20 Smarties up, right? And then we get the kids out the door if you have kids, or there may be a parent that you need to kind of care for, somebody else in the family. You may have other responsibilities. And so we use another 20 Smarties up there. And then we come to work, and then we've got our basic work that we need to do, that we need to stay focused on. But then there's a distraction over here that takes another 10 Smarties, and then there's a phone call because it's an emergency, because the mother-in-law calls and she needs something right away, and then another 5 Smarties, and all of a sudden you're out of Smarties, and then something else happens in your business, and it's like, one thing too many.
Yeah.
And so the beauty of having a system is you get to save Smarties. And for me, that is like currency.
Yeah.
Is time, energy, and money. And it impacts all 3 areas. And so when you have a system, and I think that's been one of my biggest growth states within the work that I do as an entrepreneur and a coach and a practitioner, is creating those systems. And we all know that with our brains, that we want to put exercises or responsibilities or anything, habits, on automation, because we use less Smarties.
Right.
And I want a system for being able to send emails out to my clients. I want systems so that I can do an assessment well and efficiently. I want systems to plan my day. I want a systematic calendar that I can have clients book in my calendar without me having to have 5 conversations with them, right? I
Yeah,
want
this is really interesting that you're calling it systems, because a lot of times I subconsciously realize that I'm creating these systems for myself, but whenever you say it, it brings it back to the conscious. Really great example is when I learned about choice overwhelm and how much choice overwhelm I was giving to myself just for getting dressed in the morning.
yes.
Good and truly, just for getting dressed in the morning. What the heck am I going to wear? I don't
What
know if I
feels
want to put
good
on
to
those,
me right now? Like, should be blues
right?
or greens
You
today?
That's the problem. My problem was I used to wear jeans all the time. And now this may sound silly, but this can really impact the rest of your day and how effectively you can uh, do anything within your life and business. And it sucks out your Smarties. So I love jeans. They're so cute. I love them. I'm a mom. I've got 3 young kids. My body's fluctuated a bit. And jeans don't fit me quite the way they used to. And it was a point of stress for me. Every day I'd look at my jeans. Oh, well, I'll try on 3 pairs until I give up. And then I learned about choice overwhelm and realized I'm giving myself way too much choice. And that choice is actually inhibiting my freedom, which sounds counterintuitive, but it's true. So the day I decided I'm wearing leggings every day and I don't care what anybody says was the day of utmost freedom, I tell you, because my system was simple. Put on
Simple
my
system.
leggings, pick a
Yes.
top out of the 10 tops that I have that
They
I
all
enjoy.
match. It's okay.
Right? And they all work because it's the same black leggings every day and it works perfectly. I feel comfortable. I'm
Yep.
ready for anything life throws at me because you can do anything in leggings.
Yes, that's
So
right.
it just changes everything. So it's a very simplified situation, but it's the same dynamic.
Absolutely. And you just hit it right, the nail right on the head around that piece. And so, how do we simplify processes and systems? And I think this is the area where most people don't understand the level of growth that needs to happen. And what I know, that if you want to accelerate your goals, you've got to simplify the systems. You've got to create the systems and simplify the systems. And then you need to find somebody who has the systems to help you with that, so
Mm,
that you've got somebody to model after. And the And to that note, that third point that I was going to mention is to find somebody who's an effective coach or an effective guide for you that can make a world of difference, because they can shorten the time frame for finding those systems. I have spent a long time finding systems, trying to figure it out my own way, because I don't quite fit into what everybody else has. And I've spent lots of money on other people's programs, and to just not be able to be successful because it doesn't align with my goals, or there's some inner conflict going on, or I've got some past negative experiences that hold me back. One of the things that I really, my growth area is around authenticity. How do I show up authentically? How do I show up and speak from my heart? And how do I show up and be in service from that place, having high empathy, understanding when clients feel stressed? I can feel that, and I use it now as a tool for information, but I know how to release that very quickly for myself. So it doesn't affect my coaching. What it does is it gives me information. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges around high empathy entrepreneurs is they're very kinesthetic. They feel and sense things occurring around them. They don't necessarily even have languaging for it. What it is sensory acuity. And there's lots of descriptions for that, but they feel it, but they don't know how to manage that so that they can still move forward efficiently and effectively.
Right.
And one of the greatest gifts we have as high empathy entrepreneurs is that we can connect very authentically with our clients. But the trick is not to leave them there. It's like, yes, you can relate, but let's move them up the ladder so that they can start to build the resilience and the that sustainability around their mental health. Like, what takes you off, what railroads you? Let's address that and teach you how to recognize that at a 1 out of 10 before it becomes a 10 out of 10. Right? I
Yes,
mean, you know what? If
absolutely.
you wait till it's 10 out of 10, you've got like a snowball that is running out of control. It's going down the hill and it's hard to catch. It's like, how do you recognize that at a 1 out of 10 so that you can change it at a 1 out of 10, and then you're not wasting all that time as it escalates to a 10 and then having to come back. So when I look at self-regulation, which is really one of the biggest keys to getting traction, how do you not get into a reactive or a shutdown state which looks like procrastination, overwhelm, like whatever the language you want to put to it? How fast can you recover when you actually start to move in there? So if you spend 3 days trying to recover from an event that you've or a speaking engagement, that's lost time. So how do I help you change that direction very early on so you never escalate to that point where you need 3 days for recovery?
That's
Right?
huge. And that
Or
can, correct me if I'm wrong, can that be then used if you know your cycle? Like
your patterns.
people who have, right, they're if you have a chronic mental illness, if you know some of the patterns and you can predict that, it can be used for something as extreme as that.
Absolutely. And that's, I want to be very cautious about, the word mental health, because it can be taken as a very sort of clinical mental health versus, uh, in more of a coaching dynamics where it's more generally used in the public, right? Mental health is used in a number, just like trauma is used in a number of different ways and has different meanings to different people. I want to be sort of careful around that.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, when someone has experienced emotional dysregulation, which sometimes will show up as mental health issues, um, what can I teach them about emotional regulation to keep them more on an even keel so they're not wasting energy in that reactive or shutdown mode? And so the third point is really, how do you find somebody who's an effective coach and a guide? Um, that piece I think is key. And myself as a coach, I still reach out to other coaches and other guides who excel in areas that I don't.
Right.
I'm gifted, you're gifted. As entrepreneurs, we usually have some sort of gifting, but we also struggle with other areas. So how do we recognize those? And I think the shift from going from a solopreneur to an actual entrepreneur where I've got support was a huge game changer for me. And so, who is that one person that you feel um, safe with? It's going to stay confidential. They know that there won't be any judgment, and they can really hear you and then troubleshoot and problem solve with you and then give you some tools to move forward. So a skilled coach isn't going to provide only support, but also accountability, guidance, and perspective. Because when we stretch, I think of it being a, you know, I talk about the island of probability. We all know that's the comfort zone, right? That's the comfort
Yeah.
zone that we talked about at the beginning. But what happens is when we start to step into um, the towards the island of um, what might be possible, it's a stretch, and that will put us into a dysregulated state. We'll start to get anxious about things because we don't have anything to model it after. We don't have familiarity. And most of us, if we're doing it alone, will not succeed. You can only get so far alone. And the biggest thing I teach on one of the biggest things I teach entrepreneurs is don't try and do this alone. Create a community, be part of a community, come together. And because we all have different gifts, when we all come together, we have the ability to collaborate and um, really access everybody's brilliance and support each other. So finding somebody to help us navigate our challenges, stay focused on our goals, and accelerate our progress will save immense time, energy, and our money, right? Because we're not spending so much time in that doing the grunt work; it's already done for us. And so I think those are some of the biggest pieces around. I would say the three biggest pieces that I can think of around unlocking our full potential and thriving in both our personal and professional lives. And it's amazing the shift people experience once we get the self-regulation piece in place, and then we have them do some shifts so they're at cause in their life and not at effect. So they're not reacting to everything in their life. They're actually making choice every moment of the day in a way that is easy and aligned with them. And that brings us all the way back to values. We need to know our values so that we can make faster, easier, more aligned decisions. So yeah,
That's,
just
I was like, and that's it in a nutshell. No, truly, it's funny because like after having this conversation, it just seems easy. We know that it's not. We know we're living this. Everyone here, um, conceptually, it's easy.
but what if you have
And
a map? What if you have a map?
that's it. That's it. And that's where I feel like because you've outlined the first few steps, or at least the concept, this is like the beginning of that map.
Yeah.
And then once we can take that action and navigate that space with, like you said, accountability, guidance, and perspective, I think that that's how you get to the point where you can respond rather than react, where you can actually feel aligned with who you truly are. I frequently talk about what I like to call the two icities, authenticity and simplicity, because they go hand in hand. The more you simplify what you're doing and how you're behaving and the choices you make, everything, the more you simplify it, the easier it is for you to lean into your authentic power. The more you lean into your authentic power, the more you understand how to simplify all of those things that you started to simplify in the first place. And it becomes very cyclical. And you get to live in this world of the two icities and really start to embody who you were meant to be. So now that said, I wanted to invite you to share some final words, some last thoughts that will help solidify this in the hearts and minds of the people who are viewing today.
Well, let's just think about why we stepped into entrepreneurship. My highest value is freedom. Most entrepreneurs stepped into the work they do because they wanted freedom. And what the piece that shows up is the amount of work that goes in on the back end of entrepreneurship. So my invitation to you is to think about your awareness of your unconscious patterns. Think about your recipe for sustainable success. And I invite you to find someone that can help you navigate the challenges, stay focused on your goals, and accelerate your progress. By partnering with the right person, you can unlock your full potential and thrive in both your personal and your professional lives, which I don't know any entrepreneur who does not want to do that. And so to me, it's all about freedom and how do I create freedom for my clients so they can live the life that they have always wanted to live with achieve their goals with clarity and resilience, sustain momentum, and prevent the burnout that so many entrepreneurs succumb to. So if you'd like to connect, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I think Shauna has that up on the screen. If you want to have a 30-minute conversation and just explore some of this or explore a little further, I'm happy to do that with you with a free consultation. And let's see what we can do to create sustainable growth and fulfillment for you and the freedom that you've been looking for.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, everyone, that this information is also in the show notes. You'll be able to dive in there one click away and start a conversation with Simone, which I highly recommend you do. The types of insights that I personally have gotten through my extended relationship with Simone are innumerable. And that's, I feel like, understating it. So I strongly encourage you to reach out. And with that, I also strongly encourage you to hang around, subscribe, follow, like, share, because you don't want to miss the next conversation. We are having a number of them within the house of Marketing Momentum for Mental Health, and even more as we continue with Marketing Rebels. With that, I hope you have a great rest of your day and lean into a little bit more of what does it mean to show up as you, and how can I be more proactive in regulating myself within myself and myself around myself.